Welcome to the Manufacturing Masters Podcast with your host, Allison DeFord.
If you're a manufacturer who's at all interested in keeping your spindles turning and earning, this episode is for you. I get to sit down with Arthur Field, who is a self-proclaimed born problem solver, aka really unique distributor who isn't afraid to get uncomfortable to achieve the greater good. And what we talk about is really the cost, the true cost of tooling. And we get into cost versus price and uncover a lot of residual effects that I'd never thought of. Arthur's the territory manager at Thomas Skinner and Son up in Canada. He's also a resident expert on the Manufacturing Masters platform. And I have to say, after getting to know him, an incredible human. Get ready for a powerful conversation that I guarantee will leave you with a new mindset when it comes to spending money on tooling and how you think about cost versus price. Everybody, here we grow. So Arthur, we have a really cool topic today. And I think that this will really resonate with a lot of our manufacturers. And it's, the true cost of tooling. Now, I want you to tell me, who do you feel like this conversation is for?
Yeah, so this conversation is for really, it depends on the size of your shop, okay? In smaller shops, this is going to be for the machinists on the floor because they're going to be the ones that are really impacted by this. As you get a little bit larger, it could be the purchaser, it could be the manager that's running the shop floor, and really anyone in the business that is really committed to doing the best they can for their company. I'd say tune in and pay attention to this conversation.
Excellent. Well, so my takeaway from that is if you are a manufacturing leader, owner listening, please share this with all those people that Arthur just mentioned. And I think that's why I wanted to get that across is that, a lot of times we listen to a podcast or we watch it and then we don't share it with other people in our organization. So I think that was really important to start with. And why do you feel like this is a really important conversation?
I feel that, well, one, it's a conversation I have almost daily with different shops. So it's a very common conversation I find helps them out. That's why I thought it would be great if we had this conversation for everyone else to listen in. But so many people get lost in their business chasing the cheapest tool for the solution. And by cheapest, I mean they're looking for the lowest price on the PO. Now, there's nothing wrong, and you should look for the best value, but a lot of people just focus on that price on the PO, and they miss the cost of using that tool and implementing that tool.
Right. I love that you bring that up, cost versus price. That's huge.
Yep.
Well, one thing too that I want to just start with, I want to back up one sec. I love on LinkedIn, you're in your description, you are a self-proclaimed born problem solver who isn't afraid to get uncomfortable to achieve the greater good. That's exciting. That's authentic.
Yeah, it plays into this conversation a lot because some people, when you start to talk about, well, price and cost are different, they just look at you a little perplexed because in their mind, it's the same conversation. If I asked, Allison, what does this cost? For most people, when I ask that question, the first thing they think of is the price on the PO.
Right.
So if we break that down a little bit, so what is the difference, right, between cost versus price?
Yeah.
When we're talking price, we're just talking that. It's the price on the PO. That's what you see when you're signing it off, your purchaser, whoever, that's the price that's there. When we're talking about cost, we're talking about the cost either if you're on a machine in a machine shop, then we're talking about the cost it is towards that part. So you would look at how long the tool runs for, how long it takes to run, and you would have to start to look at your burn rate in your cell for your labor, right?
Right.
If you're not looking at your burn rate and how long that tool takes to run, you could end up buying something that's cheaper on the price side, but really negatively impacts your cost. And then stepping out from that, it would be also looking at any downstream effects of the tool, because that factors into the cost. A lot of parts, after they leave the machine, they go for post-processing. And if you're changing a tool to something cheaper, it could leave the part in such a way that you're actually adding to your post-processing. So yeah, you're paying less for that bit in your machine, but now you're actually adding to your cost of manufacturing.
Very smart. I think that makes a lot of sense. And you're an expert on the Manufacturing Masters platform, and you have some really great videos. And one thing I caught that I want you to share to give people an example, like, do you share your company A versus company B contrast? Because it speaks volumes.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. So we've got company on one side, and company understands everything that we're talking about here in this podcast. They look at all of the factors that are going to affect a implementation or change of a tool, and they look at the whole scope so that they can make smart decisions. They can use less of their time, less of their resources, and they can have a happier customer at the end when they deliver the product. However, on the other hand, you have companies like Company B, and Company B is stuck looking at just the price on the PO, right? Just on that purchase order. And Company B typically has someone that spends all or a large portion of their day just chasing that cheaper price. And it has a huge impact to the cost of the operations for that company. They just don't see it. They're unaware.
So Company B is very short-sighted.
Yeah.
And I think, this just makes so much sense, because I love the idea of cost versus price. And, I think we oftentimes look at that dollar sign and what money is going to come out of our account to pay for this thing versus what's the long-term effect and the peripheral effect. Like you said, if the part comes off and it's not up to snuff, then you could have additional costs as a residual effect. So you're not saving any money.
No. And I mean, if it's, I have a lot of experience in machine shops. So if it's something at the machine, it could be that your operator on that machine or the machinist on that machine, depending their skill level, but that person at the machine is now having to do extra work by hand in between parts. And that can also negatively impact the morale. It's not like I think people in Company B are doing it maliciously or on purpose. I think they really love their company, and all they've been taught growing up and through the trade is you got to look at the price on the PO. They were never taught to look for the other components of the cost, the way that it impacts.
True. And I love that you just said that, because I think sometimes when we contrast, A versus B, it's like A rocks and B, you suck, right? And that's not what we're saying. And I think that was a really important distinction, that all manufacturers love their companies and care about their people and care about productivity and making money and all of that. I think sometimes we can just get a little short-sighted. So I'm hoping that this conversation will maybe open up our thinking and help create some mind shifts and some curiosity.
Yeah, it's so important. It's easy to hear something like that and be like, well, I'm in the group Company B. What are you saying about me, right? So I'm glad that we stood that out.
Yeah. No, I think that was really important. I was looking at my things that I wanted to ask you. So I feel like you already answered this a little bit, but I want to go into it more. So who benefits when you look at the cost of a tool? I think one of the things you already
Yeah.
mentioned was your team benefits.
Yep.
Like, let's talk about this for a sec.
Yeah, and really we can go back to like that company A, company B scenario, okay? Company A is a local manufacturer that I work with, and they are a shop that everybody wants to work for, okay? So they've got talent lining up, so that's a benefit to the company. They've got great retention because they treat their people very well. They offer in-house training, right? This is all a benefit of looking at the cost of the tooling. The other people that benefit is the people running the machines. They've minimized the manual efforts by the people so they can focus on the quality of your parts and the finish of your parts and all of the critical stuff that you're really training them to focus on. They can focus into that. So really, everyone in the company, the organization will benefit. The customer at the end will benefit. The reputation of that company in the market, because the reputation increases as the quality output increases and as employee morale increases. Yeah, manufacturing is big, but also very small. So the shops that are really focused on getting the costs right to balance their processes have a great reputation in the industry. And the shops that perhaps are missing that opportunity and are really focused on the price, that tends to bleed into other parts of their business as well, just as a result of the mindset of thinking, lower price is better.
What a fantastic observation. How many times do you think when looking at POs or before you cut the PO, right? You're looking at the quotes.
Yeah.
And how often do you suppose that a manufacturer sits back and thinks, first of all, beyond price?
Yeah.
Which you've pointed out is crucial. Second, how often do you think we sit back and say, how will this impact our customer?
I
Right? There's a lot of
yeah.
in-house thought, but that was a huge brick to the head, what you just said.
Yeah, I don't know how often it happens. I know my interactions with shops, it's more often that I'm explaining this conversation with them,
Right.
because it wasn't part of their training and development. They never worked at a company that looked at it this way. I'm fortunate that I did early in my career, and I got to be involved in that conversation from an early point in my career. I don't think it's often enough. That's about all I can say about that.
Well, I'm hoping that this wasn't just a brick to my head, but excuse me, to everybody listening. Like, I'm from the marketing side of things, which that's my world. I'm always talking to manufacturers about, how do you want your customers to feel? Often at the beginning of an engagement with them, and they'll look at me and there's crickets. It's like, what do you mean? And I'm a big fan of always putting the customer front and center. And I never thought about it when it comes to tooling and purchasing equipment until just now. Like, it truly, if we put the customer first at every level, wow,
Yeah.
like this really does impact them down the road.
Yeah, and I would just, I agree, and I would add that it's not just external customers either. The internal customers, the teams you're building, all benefit from a focus here. I just see it ripple out throughout all aspects. When you walk in and a company's got it, and you can see the smiles on the faces and everything else that's going on. It's usually a cleaner shop. I don't know why they're usually cleaner shops, but they just seem to have it more dialed in. And now this goes up and down. I see small shops and extremely large shops doing very well in this conversation. It seems to be the bulk of the middle of the market that gets lost looking at price, for whatever reason that might be.
Interesting observation. I think there's probably something there worth unpacking. And maybe in a different conversation, or maybe for the person listening, they might go, "Ooh, I need to pay attention to this." So I think that's another good observation. What questions should a manufacturer ask to fully understand the true cost of tooling? Like, are there some specific questions you think would be good?
Yeah. Now, of course, it's going to vary situation to situation.
Right.
I'm going to speak specifically from looking at tooling on CNC equipment. That's my area of specialty. However, this will apply to other operations. You're just going to have to modify the questions a little bit.
Okay.
So there's a couple of situations. Either one, you're looking to set up and to run something new to your shop, right? Whether you're a job shop or an OEM, it applies to both. It could be a new part for manufacturing, or you could be looking at modifying an existing operation. Right now, with the way that price increases keep coming, I've had a lot of conversations this year around existing operations. How can we cut costs? We've already dialed in this process over the last couple of years. We've made the program as efficient as we can. What can we do about the tooling? So when you're looking, let's start with that situation, okay? When you're looking at a situation where the machine's already set up and you're looking at the cost of a tool, I would start, where to start is to look at that tool that's doing usually the most work, the brunt of the work, or the one that you're consuming the most of, because that's going to have your biggest return when you're trying to cut the overall cost of your part.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you identify where you're starting, again, whether it's a high consumable or something that's going to improve, maybe it's the slowest tool, whatever you're choosing one starting point. And then from there, you're looking to see, okay, and gather all the data. How long is this tool running right now? How many am I using on this job? What is, is it adding any post-processing? Does it create a lot of burrs? Does it create a lot of post-processing needs by using this tool? And you kind of encapsulate the current state of what you're looking at. And then you look at what you could do to replace it. Now, I'm a big advocate for partnering with people up and down in your supply chain. In this case, if it was me, I would be reaching out to my supplier or my distributor, and I would say, look, this is the tool I'm looking at. This is where I'm at right now. What can you do to help me reduce the cost on my part? And then that would start the conversation. And then you would just want to make sure that you check all of those areas over again, including the downstream effects of putting that tool in. Now, there is a little bit to do there, because sometimes you might get through the first half and then you reach out to your distributor, or maybe you've got someone in your own company that's already, doing the research and capable to tackle this. Depends on the size of the company. But it might get to a point where, okay, here's your options. Then you need to look at what it's going to take, like the cost of implementing those. If it's something simple, something quick, something that's plug and play, meaning you can just replace the tool directly, maybe adjust a few parameters, great. That's a no-brainer way to tackle it. However, if you look at something and, you're only going to save a small amount of time or a small amount of money, and it's going to take you 6 months to deploy.
Yeah.
You've got to consider the costs on both sides. Maybe you're better off leaving that exactly the way it is, because, the ROI on that change, it would take you 2 years to recoup the cost of implementing the change. So it's gathering all of those data points and then looking at your return on investment and calculating how that makes sense. Now, hopefully there's someone in your company that can do that, or you've got someone trusted in your supply chain or a contractor you're working with that can help you sort it out. It's only March now, and I've spent 3 meetings a week since the beginning of the year with different companies on different product lines, looking at the ROI. And there's been a couple where we looked at it and we did all the testing even. We did a guaranteed trial offer. We tested the tool. Okay, yes, we said this. It was easy to implement. We're getting these results. But we looked at the ROI for the investment for the tooling system,
Mhm.
And the ROI was something like 8 years. So we said, okay, well, in that case, it doesn't make sense for you to invest in this.
Yeah.
Let's look at another part of the program. And we did. We found somewhere else that we could help them save way more money through that investment. But it's got to be a smart decision, not just a shiny object syndrome or something like that.
I think that's really important. And do you feel like, I love the idea of asking for help. I'm an oldest child, and admittedly, it is hard for me personally to ask for help, but I'm learning. And what I've
Yeah.
learned is that when you ask for help, you get it. So I love it that you brought that up. Do you feel like that manufacturers could lean on their distributors way more than they do for this kind of help and guidance?
Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of manufacturers are missing out on. I can't say all, right?
Right.
But I think there's a lot of them that are missing an opportunity to partner with their suppliers, their distributors, whatever their supply chain looks like, and having an open, honest conversation. Like, look, this is what I need to make this part for. What can you do to help me get under this? And there's a lot of outstanding companies that are out there doing that kind of work.
Mhm.
And it's just having the conversation up front and giving them something to test on to build that trust. I get in manufacturing, it's hard to trust sometimes. We've all been burned.
Yep.
You trusted someone and it cost you, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000. It depends what level that you're investing at when you're trusting someone here.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of high quality people out there that want to do nothing more than help your company be more profitable.
Agreed. And I love that. I'm a fan of being of service before you sell. And,
Yeah.
and I think those are the kind of distributors and companies that you want to look for. I have a question, and this will be one of our last questions because we have to wrap up. What do you say to the manufacturer that says, I don't really have the time and resources to put into this, looking beyond, assessing the cost versus the price? What do you say to them?
Well, there's two
Big sigh.
points. There's 2 points. The one is something that's often missed in this cost conversation. It's the cost of not making a change now. Okay. It's not a pretty picture. The reality that I keep seeing, and there's already been 3 more shops this year in my area, is the people that don't come to terms and look at the cost conversation versus the price end up shutting their doors. In a time where everything's rapidly advancing in technology and cutting tools and on the CNC machine tool side of things, and all of this is continuing to advance,
Yeah.
no one honestly has the time to do it all in-house. However, what we just talked about, the partnering with people in your supply chain. For machine shops, it's looking at your CAD/CAM software providers like Mastercam or GibbsCam. They have whole teams that will do the bulk of the lifting when it comes to your programming and your training. They'll take that on for you. On the distributor side, you can go to your distributor and have a conversation to look at consolidating your tooling, to look to see if you qualify for something like vendor managed inventory. And these are all things that are put there to save you time. So if you're in a shop where you have one person that spends most of their day dealing with the tooling, then partnering with the people in your supply chain is going to save you that time. Now you're going to have that person freed up to do the work for the business that they're actually skilled in, that they've spent their decades or however many years getting experience in. Now that they don't get tied up in this whole chasing the lowest price conversation, which is usually 5% or less, by the way, your consumables is 5% or less of your yearly operational budget. And you can put them working on that 95% of your business that they were hired for in the first place.
I think that's big. That's big. Because how often, especially when you're a small manufacturer, if you're a small shop, how often do we wear a ton of hats, right? As the owner.
Yeah.
And we expect our people to as well, instead of looking beyond and utilizing those partners that are out there, we try so hard to keep it inside and overtax that person, let's say, instead of letting them do what they're good at.
Yeah.
100% of the time, and offloading this type of activity to a partner that could really help you and be way more effective and faster, probably.
They're experts trained in their specialties. Yeah. And really quick, I don't want people out there to get into the whole, oh, my shop's not big enough mindset. Mm. I have one customer I work with. He's a one-man shop with 8 machines, and he lands heavily on his supply chain because he sees the value in it, and he's one man running a company. So you're not too small to work with your supply chain.
Well, I think that's a very important distinction, and I'm really glad you brought it up. Our time is up. I would love to know, it always goes way too quick.
Yeah, always.
I would love to know from you, what is your favorite thing about working with manufacturers, like in this industry? What's your favorite thing?
The favorite thing for me is that it pushes me to develop myself to better communicate the value and the opportunities that are there for companies to really save money, because those companies, that's somebody's dream, and they're employing people, they're contributing to the economy, and to be able to support in that, it really it moves me a lot to be able to play that role.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. And it's so heartfelt and genuine. And that's one of the things that I dig about you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me and our audience today. I think anybody would be hard pressed to not listen to this and just feel like, gosh, I just got so much out of that conversation. And I think you're a shining example of the fact that there are distributors and partners out there that they want to be of service to you. And I hope that more manufacturers will take advantage of that and look beyond and not just protect their dream, but, build on it in a more sustainable way.
Yeah. Awesome.
And people like you are helping them do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Allison.
And everybody, you listening, I just want to take a minute to say you have a choice of how you spend your time, of what you listen to or watch every day. And I know you're really busy. So I just want to say thank you for choosing to spend a little time with us on this podcast. And we just want you to know, I don't think you hear it enough, that the work that you do really matters, really makes a difference. So thank you. And I want to encourage you to reach out to partners. You don't have to go it alone, and keep going. And we'll see you next time.
If you're not already, subscribe to the Manufacturing Masters podcast on Apple Music or Spotify. And for a deeper dive, head on over to manufacturing-masters.com. It's everything they never taught you in school.